To everyone, I'm Congresswoman LaMonica McIver, and you may not know my name, but Kristi Noem sure does. Because this administration is trying to put me in prison for 17 years for standing up to the department she leads.
This may look like a heated press conference, but it's actually a stress test of how power responds to dissent. What's really being tested here is whether institutional authority can tolerate scrutiny from within the democratic system. This raises broader questions about the limits of executive power and the role of elected officials when federal enforcement decisions ripple through local communities. In this video, we'll break down how oversight, accountability, and political pressure collide, and what that reveals about governance in moments of conflict.
Oh, no, let's go!
Congresswoman McIver.
Thank you so much. Good morning to everyone. I'm Congresswoman LaMonica McIver, and you may not know my name, but Kristi Noem sure does. Because this administration is trying to put me in prison for 17 years for standing up to the department she leads, for standing up to ICE, because that is what this administration does. I represent communities in New Jersey that live in constant fear. Families too terrified to step outside, send their kids to school, go grocery shopping, or take a trip to the doctor because of the harassment of ICE and Homeland Security. And when I stood up to protect them, this administration came after me. Secretary Noem tried to shame me, she tried to embarrass me, and she tried to smear me. But I am not ashamed of doing my job and protecting the people. Kristi, this is for you. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. You pretend to be tough, you stage pictures with agents, you call citizens domestic terrorists, and you gleefully terrorize our communities because you are a coward. You are a liar, and you are a threat to the safety of our communities. In my own community, in communities across this country, people have died under the watch of DHS. And I have seen with my own eyes the brutal cruelty of the ICE facilities that she has tried to keep us out of, that she is trying to hide from you, the American people. So I say it plain and simple. Kristi Noem must go. And if she does not go, we will impeach her. And I'll give you one final word. I will not rest until she is. Thank you.
The moment lands with a force that is impossible to ignore. In a hearing room built for procedure and restraint, Representative LaMonica McIver abandons caution and speaks in plain terms. She says she is being threatened with severe punishment for confronting the agency, led by Kristi Noem. She names the pressure, the attempted shaming, the public smears, and then she does something rare in modern politics. She refuses to soften the truth. She looks directly at power and calls it out. What we witness in this exchange is not a policy disagreement wrapped in technical language. It is a raw indictment of how authority is exercised, how fear is managed, and how accountability is often deflected. McIver describes communities in New Jersey living with constant anxiety, afraid to step outside, afraid to access basic services, afraid of encounters with federal enforcement. She frames her confrontation not as an act of defiance for attention, but as the fulfillment of an obligation to protect the people she represents. And in doing so, she exposes a deeper tension at the heart of American governance. This moment reveals how power reacts when challenged from below. According to McIver, the response was not dialogue or oversight, but retaliation, public embarrassment, personal attacks. The machinery of government turned towards silencing an elected official for standing between an agency and the communities affected by its actions. That accusation alone carries enormous weight because it raises a fundamental question. In a system built on representation, who bears the cost when an official speaks out, and who benefits when dissent is punished? Her words cut through the usual abstractions. She accuses the leadership of performing toughness rather than practicing responsibility, of staging images instead of confronting consequences, of labeling citizens as threats while ignoring the fear such rhetoric creates. This is not just a critique of tone, it is a challenge to legitimacy. When enforcement becomes theater, when authority relies on intimidation rather than trust, the social contract begins to fracture. The broader context matters. The Department of Homeland Security and Immigration and Customs Enforcement operate with vast power, often far from public view. Oversight is complex. Transparency is limited. And when representatives attempt to enter facilities, request information, or question practices, they can be met with resistance. McIver claims she has seen conditions firsthand that the department would prefer to keep hidden. Whether every detail withstands scrutiny is precisely why hearings exist. But the emotional core of her statement points to a reality many Americans recognize. Decisions made in distant offices ripple outward into real lives. This is where morality enters the frame. Government is not an abstract machine, it is a human institution shaped by choices. When leaders prioritize optics over outcomes or punishment over dialogue, they redefine what justice looks like. McIver's accusation that leadership behavior endangers communities is not merely rhetorical. It suggests that policies, enforcement strategies, and public messaging can escalate fear rather than resolve problems. And fear, once embedded, becomes a tool. It disciplines not just those targeted, but anyone watching. The threat of impeachment she raises is not just a procedural demand. It is a symbolic line in the sand. It signals that accountability does not end at appointment or confirmation, that even the most powerful officials remain subject to judgment when their actions violate the values they are sworn to uphold. In American history, moments like this often appear chaotic in real time. They are uncomfortable, they break decorum, but they also serve as stress tests for democracy itself. What does this exchange tell us about leadership? It suggests that true strength is not found in public displays or aggressive language, but in the willingness to answer hard questions, in allowing scrutiny, in accepting that authority must be justified continuously, not assumed permanently. When a representative says she will not rest until accountability is enforced, she is invoking a principle older than any single administration. Power must answer to the people. This hearing also exposes the fragility of trust between communities and institutions. Trust between elected officials and executive agencies. Trust that the law is applied fairly rather than selectively. Once that trust erodes, restoring it becomes far more difficult than maintaining it ever was. The exchange we just witnessed is a symptom of that erosion and a warning about where unchecked authority can lead. As the room fills with applause and tension, the words linger, not because they were polite, but because they were direct, because they challenge the audience to decide what kind of governance they accept. A system that shields itself from criticism, or one that invites it as a safeguard against excess. This is why moments like this matter. They pull back the curtain. They remind us that democracy is not maintained by silence or comfort, but by confrontation and courage, by representatives willing to endure personal risk to raise questions others avoid, and by a public willing to pay attention when power is challenged in plain sight. If you believe these moments deserve scrutiny rather than dismissal, if you believe accountability is not optional but essential, then stay engaged. Support our work to examine power honestly and without fear. Subscribe to Liberty Report USA.